If you want to achieve anything in this world, you got to be willing to put the groundwork in. From dawn till dusk, rain or shine, trust me, you're going to be busy. Plowing, seeding, muck spreading, you name it. But fear not, your endeavors ain't going to be in vain. Just take a look at those crops and your bank balance. And before you know it, you'll be your own boss. And the sky's the limit. Work that land and take home the gold. Real Farm Gold Edition. Available now.
If you're a simple guy like me and you had to answer what the 3 coolest words in the English language are, that's a no-brainer. It's DNA Army Gaming, and they've got quite the catalog of games under their belt. An only upclone that released in August, Falafel Simulator, VEGTERIA, another game in this top 10, and Farmer Life Simulator. And if Farmer Life Simulator tells us anything, it's that living a farmer's life isn't easy. I got out of bed at the crack of dawn. I took my crate, threw my harvest inside, and took it to the vegetable shop to sell. After that, I swung by the nursery, bought more tomatoes, planted them, dumped fertilizer on top, pondered if the small home garden I had in real life meant I, too, was a farmer. Is this how farming works? And since my first day of work was complete, I went to bed. Actually, turns out that was only half of my first day. I left the house to explore, and the game started giving me this weird dystopian vibe. I would have planted more crops, but apparently I only owned a tiny fraction of the entire field. I hopped into the truck and started heading to town, but when I looked at the driver's seat, no one was there. Wait, there's no one driving the car. Wait. The town was composed only of vegetable, juice, and sandwich shops with a single pharmacy, and every character in town was a jacked 30-year-old dude bro. There wasn't a single female in sight. But the weirdest thing was that whenever I got out of my truck, it would just drive away on its own. It's like someone kicked it out of park every time I stepped out. So after killing time for nearly 10 minutes because it wasn't the designated farmer bedtime yet, wait. Oh, awesome. I was finally able to sleep, and when I woke up, my tomato plants had fully grown overnight. Now that's some good fertilizer. But my joy abruptly ended because I couldn't harvest the tomatoes unless I had a crate, and I'd used my only one yesterday. Oh my God, I can't harvest the tomatoes without the crate. So I went to the veggie shop, but they didn't want to sell their crates. Eventually, I found out the nursery sold them, and I was able to harvest and sell my tomatoes, making $100, which was approximately the amount of money I'd started with. In Farm Expert 2017, you feel the real trouble of being farmer. One of the first steps in the tutorial is hitching a trailer full of crops, then unhitching it by hitting R. But instead of unhitching the trailer, hitting R activated its hydraulics, spilling all the crops to the ground. The first thing I did in the tutorial was soft lock myself so I couldn't progress. And they were right. I really did feel the real trouble of being farmer. So I opened career mode in Sunny Valley. It was a farming paradise. Rich cobblestone pathways, barns, seemingly unlimited land, all mine to build upon. Just one problem. The only inventory on my entire farm was the tractor, but I had no attachments for it. I had no seeds, no fertilizer, and no tools. More importantly, I had no tutorial, but I'd played enough Stardew Valley to know the first thing I needed was some seed, so I set out on a quest to get some. My tractor wasn't the fastest way to get around, and it didn't help that the engine would randomly stop for no apparent reason. After what felt like years, I reached the beets and potato store, and I attempted to buy some seed, but when I hit the key to buy, nothing happened. Chat told me I needed a trailer, which in hindsight Made sense. So I set out to find one, and eventually did. I hitched it to the tractor and went back to the store, but still, hitting the purchase button didn't do anything. Okay, I'm pressing enter. It wasn't until 1 minute was left on my timer that I finally found a store that sold seeds. So I bought 5,000 kilograms of seed and went back to the farm. I hit the hydraulics button, the only vehicle control I was taught, to dump it all over my field, as a farmer does. And it was then that I saw the trailer was empty. Wait, why is it empty? I thought I bought wheat. Agricultural Simulator 2012 is one of 3 games from the Agricultural Simulator franchise that have made it onto this list. This is thanks to the masterminds at United Independent Entertainment, a team battling neck and neck with DNA Army Gaming to revolutionize the simulator gaming space. Of the 24 games their teams developed, 1 has positive reviews, 5 are mixed, and a whopping 18 are mostly negative. But Agricultural Simulator will be different. I opened the game and was prompted for the registration code on the back of the manual, even though I'd purchased the game digitally. But I found it easily enough and opened the options to set the resolution to 1440p, which the game didn't like. Oh, wait, what's happening? What is happening? I reverted back to 1080p and started a new game. I was greeted by a menu to purchase things for my farm. I thought this was to configure my farm before playing the game. No. This menu was the game, even though there was nothing on the Steam store page to suggest it would be a game played primarily through menus. So for about 10 minutes, I just clicked buttons to buy things. I bought 400 geese, but I realized eventually that I could exit the menus. I didn't have a player character, it's more like a free camera mode with a triple helping of motion blur, and the screen would minimize any time I left clicked. You guys enjoying the game? But thankfully, there's no reason to left click because you can't interact with anything. I eventually realized I could teleport into a vehicle, but there was nearly a full second of input delay, and it made it a little tricky to control. I drove around the farm searching for my geese, and I couldn't find them, so I went back and bought 2,000 rabbits. I'd hired a worker for my farm and was able to find him plowing the field, but no matter how much I searched for the thousands of animals I just bought, they were nowhere to be found. They only existed in the menus. And according to user reviews, this was the best game in the franchise we'd be playing today. Real Farm Gold Edition had the first Steam store page without glaring spelling errors or broken English. It was a breath of fresh air after all the previous ones. I opened it up and started a file on career mode, which is about working your way up to eventually owning your own farm. Matt Davis, or as I like to call him, Grandpa Matt, gives you a series of missions to teach you how to farm. And the first thing I noticed was that the driving physics actually felt normal, and I was baffled when the game provided proper instructions on what to do. I hitched a weight to the front of the tractor, hitched a plow to the back, and I started plowing the fields. This was the first time I was actually farming, and the music in the game actually kind of slapped. It wasn't easy. It took 15 minutes of plowing, but I interrupted Grandpa Matt's nap time and I got my payment. Now, with the cultivator, I ran into a minor issue with the hydraulics. As I tried to cultivate the field, it was hopping around like a lowrider straight out of a rap music video, no matter how slowly I drove. I had to redo areas of the field the cultivator missed because half the time it was flying through the air. But honestly, I'm not going to complain, since this is the first time so far that I actually got to farm. Wild Season Episode 1 just didn't open. I tried compatibility modes, running as admin, verifying the files, restarting my PC, and searching the Steam forums to troubleshoot. There was no solution. I was actually so desperate to get it working that I was considering running it in a virtual machine. I thought the game looked cute, so I was actually looking forward to this one. Apparently, the story ends abruptly after summer year 1, hence the episode 1 in the title. So hopefully Wild Season episode 2 runs on my computer. My hopes are high since apparently it's been in development for longer than Silksong. Pro Farm Manager is like SimCity, but for farming. It's a game that's been in early access for 6 years, and oddly advertises a multiplayer mode with versus AI. I'm just envisioning players fighting an RTS battle with their tractors, but they wouldn't stand a chance against my team of 2,000 rabbits. Now apparently the English version isn't finished, but that's not going to be a problem. I started a game and was given a welcome on screen, and that's it. So I started building the farm, and I found it kind of odd that the buildings, rather than getting constructed, would just awkwardly rise out of the ground. And some would construct immediately, while others would take days. I hired some helpers for the farm, but none of them ever appeared. I bought some animals, and they also didn't appear. I spent 400,000 euros on giant buildings to hold sheep, but I couldn't get any sheep onto the farm. I got some vehicles shipped to my farm, and I found out I had to send them to retrieve my other orders, as well as my livestock. I bought a vehicle to get them, since it was the only vehicle I could afford with the capacity to transport things, but the game didn't want me to put animals in the back of a pickup truck, which in hindsight makes sense. So I decided to try working the fields. I picked up the plow I'd ordered and attached it to the tractor, but I couldn't find an option to plow the field no matter how hard I tried. The same went for cultivating. There was just no option to do it anywhere. The menus in this game reminded me of Dwarf Fortress. I couldn't figure out how to do anything. Eventually, I found out I could take out more loans, so I did. I brought a proper livestock trailer, hitched it behind a vehicle, and I was finally able to order it to pick up the sheep. And after some struggling, I even got them into the building, which conveniently had the option to remove dead animals after they perish, since you probably can't interact with them in any way. Now it's the time we've all been waiting for. It's a Billy Mays 2-for-1 special because we're playing Agricultural Simulator 2013 and then Agricultural Simulator Historical Farming. With these games, United Independent Entertainment decided to outsource the development to a company called Actalogic, who have since rebranded to Actalogic with a capital L, and one can only assume that's because their career had peaked with Agricultural Simulator 2013. I opened the game and it had a 4:3 aspect ratio, which was stretched to 16:9. I tried to change the resolution and the game crashed, but it's fine. I entered the tutorial. Now, even though they outsourced the development, Agricultural Simulator 2013 still minimizes when you left click, which tells me that they built this game using Agricultural Simulator 2012's code. I opened the tutorial and it told me to use WASD to move, and I was confused when the tutorial didn't progress. Turns out I had to hop into the tractor to continue, but the game didn't tell me how to drive the tractor. In fact, no matter what button I pushed, the tractor wouldn't move. I couldn't even get out of it. Am I just stuck? How do I get out? Help. Help. I had to quit the game. I started a new game because this was yet another game with a broken tutorial, and I accidentally hit a button that turned me into God, which I can only assume is a debug feature that got left in. I warped back into my corporeal form and tried to pet the dog, but the game minimized because I left-clicked. I found a floating graduation cap that looked like a tutorial, so I ran up to it and the game crashed. Upon reopening it, I found the pasture and was able to pet the animals. The game crashing apparently fixed the left click issue, although they looked like they might need an exorcism. right. Something wrong with this cow? The tutorial outside the pasture told me that as long as the animals were inside, they wouldn't die, and I appreciated the warning. Anyway, it was time to farm, so I hopped on my tractor, and it actually drove this time. The input lag was about the same as in Agricultural Simulator 2012, so it wasn't easy to drive in a straight line. Now, unfortunately, at one point, my tractor flipped, so I hit Q as I was told it would reset the vehicle. But a prompt opened on screen asking if I wanted to return to my farm, but I didn't have a mouse cursor to click on the prompt. So I clicked randomly trying to get the prompt off the screen, and suddenly I was transported to my farm without the tractor. And when I tried to buy another tractor, the game crashed. But little did I know that Actologic were just warming up. When I opened Agricultural Simulator Historical Farming, it oddly gave me the option to load my profile from Agricultural Simulator 2013. That's weird. I thought they were different games. But I started a new save, and the starting area was awfully similar. The chickens, the dog, and the livestock were the same. The tractor and its awful input lag were the same. The weird vacant stare of the player character was the same. And it turns out, even the crashing was the same. Oh God. At this point, I was blissfully unaware that the crashing would get even worse. When I reopened the game, any attempt to get onto the tractor resulted in an immediate crash. Trying to start a new game in the Alpine area resulted in a crash. I crashed 7 times in a row without being able to do anything in-game. I immediately crashed again. And so I just fiddled with the graphics settings and went for a walk, because that's all I could do. And after walking for just 1 minute, I found the boundary of the world, which had the appearance of a chunk error in Minecraft. It was like the ground decided to become Aurora Borealis. But it turns out I couldn't even explore. If I went too close to the nearby town, the game would crash. I decided to go for a swim in a nearby pond, but the water didn't have collision, so I just ran through the bottom of the lake, and the game just crashed again. In total, Agricultural Simulator Historical Farming crashed 12 times in just 30 minutes. Thankfully, it was time for yet another banger by DNA Army Gaming, the predecessor of Farmer Life Simulator, VEGTERIA. I started a new game in VEGTERIA and noticed the world was strangely post-apocalyptic. VEGTERIA is supposed to be a game about running a vegetable shop, but I almost expected zombies to barge out of the shops as I ran down the street. I found the tool shop and I had the exact amount of money to buy a seed bag, so I did. VEGTERIA is played along a single street, and each building on the street has a crate in front. At the end of the street is the vegetable shop. In the shop, you get phone calls asking you to deliver vegetables. You then place an order for those veggies using the phone, and they appear outside your shop. Then you bring the veggies to the crate to satisfy the order. That's it. That's the gameplay of VEGTERIA. Only because I'd bought the seed bag, I didn't have any money to order the vegetables. I ran around the entire map looking for a way to make money, but I was only able to salvage $13, and I needed $15 to make a single order of cabbage. Once again, I was soft locked, and I had to restart. Now, you can eventually get a vehicle, which I suspect might be tricky to maneuver down the street. You can even buy a farm and a house. But the thing is that you hardly profit from each order. An order of cabbage gives you 5 heads, costing $15, but delivering a cabbage randomly gives you either $3 or $4, meaning half the time you don't even profit, and the other half the time you only profit $1. The farm costs $10,000, the house $50,000. Buying a house in VEGTERIA is harder than in real life. I would have run some numbers based upon my profits I'd made in my time playing, because I'm curious the sheer amount of time it would take to buy any of this. But I actually ended the game with less money than what I'd started with. But say what you will about the game, at least it didn't crash. It's finally time for the lowest reviewed farming simulator on Steam, Age of Farming. It has a whopping 12% review score. Similar to Pro Farm Manager, Age of Farming has been in early access for 7 years, and the gaming community awaits its full release with bated breath. We don't need Elden Ring DLC, we don't need Silksong, we need Age of Farming. Their original estimate of taking a few months for development was a little off, but you can't rush perfection, and they claim the game is fully playable in its current state. So I started a new game and I was happy to see an actual tutorial. In the game, you can farm crops, chickens, bees, or wind power. Quite the random assortment of things, but I started working on the crops. I placed the field and the mayor gave me a free gift, the Sprayer 600. And when I placed the silo, the mayor gave me Crunch TL 611. It felt like it was my birthday. My tractors were working the field, but I was a little low on cash, and I accidentally clicked the delete button on my silo. I wasn't refunded any money, and when I tried to rebuild it, I didn't have enough. I worked hard to plow, cultivate, sow, and harvest my crops, but when I finished, all my crops just got deleted because I harvested them without a silo. And since I couldn't build another one and selling things didn't refund money, I was soft locked once again and had to start a new game. Oh no. But honestly, once I knew what I was doing, the game wasn't that bad. It was weird that there wasn't any music, so I played some of the bangers from Real Farm. The game also pauses when you click on a vehicle, and it's supposed to unpause after you give it directions. Sometimes it just doesn't unpause, forcing you to restart. Time has stopped for no apparent reason. But after 28 minutes of struggling and finally having sold my first harvest, I can honestly say Age of Farming was not as bad as some of the others. Here's my rankings versus the Steam rankings. Real Farm Gold Edition was easily the best game of the bunch. Farmer Life Simulator and VEGTERIA were awful, but in a fun way. Age of Farming was tedious and bare bones, but functional. Farm Expert 2017 might have been fun if I could have figured out anything to do or if it had a functional tutorial. Pro Farm Manager was a menu simulator more than a farm simulator. And that leaves us with the agricultural simulator games, composing this list's entire top 3. Agricultural Simulator 2013 was the best of the bunch. It didn't seem to have any functional farming mechanics, but at least it was fun to drive around. Agricultural Simulator 2012 was a total mess, and deceptive because they never advertised that it was a game played primarily through menus. But Agricultural Simulator Historical Farming crashed every 2 minutes of gameplay. Wild Season Episode 1, I can't rate. My computer couldn't run it, but no one else on the Steam forum seemed to have the same issue. Based on all this, in my opinion, Agricultural Simulator Historical Farming is the worst farming simulator on Steam. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video and that you have a wonderful day. Peace.